Hey everybody, and welcome to the final part of the Blender series. So today we're going to be talking about some of those things I've been hinting at the whole time about shortcuts, faster ways to work, and we're also going to look at some of the coding possibilities. Which, don't freak out. I'm going to keep it pretty simple. And then we're going to take a look at some websites that you can use because, everything I've done, I've been starting from scratch, but you don't necessarily need to start. A landscape, you don't need to make all the trees. You can find somebody else's trees that they've made and, released for free. And I'll show you some of the places you can go for that. So without further ado, let's get into it and let's talk about shortcuts and speeding up your... So if you've never used any type of 3D program, audio editor, MIDI, video editor, any of those kinds of things, then you probably just want to dive under, learn the Blender way to do things, and run from there. If you are coming from another program where, you've spent a lot of time learning the way, Photoshop or DaVinci Resolve, something, any other program that has shortcuts, has little things already set up that you've thought, okay, well, I know how to copy paste. I know how to do new this, duplicate this. Then you might have a hard time with Blender's way of doing things, but they have a solution for you. But let's start out with the Blender way of doing things anyway. So I was kind of showing you before, we were clicking over here, the tools all the time. You don't really need to do that for most things. You can just kind of leave your select box on, and then if you want to move, Blender's shortcut is G. So I kind of think of it as grab. So if you want to grab this cube, hit G, and you can move it anywhere you want. But what, you didn't want to move it just anywhere. What if you just wanted to GY, and that constrains it to just the Y axis? And the red axis is X. If we wanted to go just on the X, press just X. If you want to go just on the Z, press just Z, and that gets you just up and down. And if you want to cancel it, you can right click. So you can see that, is a fair bit faster than clicking on that move tool if you know exactly where you want it to be. The same thing goes for our other two options. The rotate, which is one that we used over here. Rotate it, brought up all those cages. We can get to a shortcut just by pressing R for rotate. And it'll rotate relative to whichever angle you're viewing it from. So if I view it from up here, I'm going to rotate it around this way. If I view it from over here, it's going to rotate around. You kind of see what I mean, relative to the angle that you're viewing it from. So G to grab, to move. You can also, constrain it to an axis. Let's see, R, we want to rotate it. What if we just want to rotate it on the Y axis? Well, we can do that too on the X axis, on the Z axis. And if you're not sure which one it is, you can just kind of go through and go, oh, okay, X, oops, that's not the one I want. Oh, Y, is that it? No, I guess I meant Z, and Z, there, that's the one you want. Because you've got this little thing up here to remind you. Half the time I forget and I end up doing, oh, RX, and I'm like, oh, wait, that's not what I wanted. I guess I wanted Y. Okay, there we go. So you can press your grab, rotate, and then you can decide which axis. You can do it just freely, relative to the view, or you can decide it should be a certain axis and only that certain axis. And you can see they light up with the color up there. So if you're ever confused which one is which, Z is up and down, Y back and forth, X left and right. And then the final one is the scale tool. So again, we moved over here. We grabbed the scale tool when we wanted to make things bigger or smaller. I feel like you're sensing a pattern already, and it is S to scale it. So S to scale, we can undo. We can also, as you probably suspected, scale it just in a specific dimension. SZ, SX, SY, RY, G. So grab it, move it, scale it, rotate it, grab it, scale it, rotate it. So you can see that gets to be pretty quick. If you know exactly what you're doing, or if you know exactly, where you want things to go, that'll get you moving pretty quick. Another thing you can do is you can turn on snapping. If you, so let's see if we can take it way back to just our basic cube. Actually, let's just get rid of this. We'll just delete it, and I'll show you another. We can get to the add objects up here. We can also get to it using a shortcut. And if I hover over it, it'll show me the shortcut, Shift A. Shift A, add a cube, and we're back to where we started from. Delete it, do it again, Shift A, add a cube. Yeah, so we're talking about snapping. So we turn on snapping, and it's set to increments. So this will be like increments along our grid. And you can see now when we grab it, it's kind of like tick, 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 ticking back and forth. It's not just moving all over the place. So if I turn this off and grab, you can see it moves smoothly anywhere in the 3D space. If I turn snapping on, then it's going to, I'll just put it back aligned with the grid. Whoops. It's going to just kind of snap to exactly where these grid marks are, which is really handy if you're, if you're building in Minecraft or something. That probably looks familiar to you because you can only, stack in cube things. So let's duplicate this. We'll Shift D to duplicate, and then now we're basically just building in Minecraft. So that works, again, the same way with, I guess not rotating, but scaling, if we turn it on. So we'll turn it on for rotating and scaling, and now you can see rotating. It's rotating in these little kind of jerking back and forth, and then the same thing in the scaling. You can see it snapping up a little bit. Chink, 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 chink. So that is how you do a bunch of basic maneuvers really quickly in Blender. What's something else you might want to do? You might want to add keyframes really quick. So let's keyframe this object's location. We just press I to insert keyframe. So I find it's helpful to have little mnemonic devices to remember these shortcuts. That's why I say, grab, rotate, scale. And then for, I, it's insert keyframe. So you can just move to the frame you want to. G, R, S, insert keyframe, move to the frame you want to, G, R, S, insert keyframe, then you move to the frame you want to, G, R, S, and then you insert a keyframe, and then you go back and you can view. And just super quick, we've got this neat little animation of just a spinning cube. So nothing super fancy, but you can see how fast you can work with shortcuts. And like I said before, animation, any little shortcut you can get is a good thing. So I mentioned, if you've never used any of these kinds of softwares before, you might as well just dive in with the Blender key map, the shortcut list and everything. So let's just delete that, and we'll add that cube back. But if you've come from a different software, you may want a different set of shortcuts that's more like what you're used to, more like the, the Photoshop or the whatever you're accustomed to. So we go up here to Edit, and we can go to Preferences. And then down here, we've got Key Map. Here we can choose between the Blender key map and what's called the industry compatible key map. So like I said, Blender's got its own little thing going. You remember grab, scale, rotate. If you work with the industry compatible, that's more about using these tools like we were looking at before. And that involves using, you kind of keep your hand in the same position, and it's more just about rapid switching of tools. So for this one, we use like the QWERTY keys. So if you kind of put your hand on the, put your pinky on the Q, your ring finger on the W, your middle finger on the E, and your pointer finger on the R, then that will select between all the different tools. So you can see how quickly I can move between those. And if you've got some that have different options for them, like the select box could be a select circle, could be a select lasso, you can just keep tapping that same key. So if I want to move it, I can move it over here, move it up there. I can, again, just grab, move it freely. If I want to rotate it, I can oops, I scaled it by mistake. If I want to rotate it, I can rotate it freely, or I can just grab one of those axes. And same, I can rotate on the Y. If you grab just the Y, or if you grab the outer circle, and then you can select the axis that you wish to be on. And again, I just grabbed it once and then tapped the, grabbed it once and then tapped the axis. So X, Y, or Z. And again, that works for anything. So we get to our scale tool and we start scaling it, and then we realize, no, I just wanted to scale it on the Z. That's all I wanted to do. Or, I meant X, or actually I meant Y, or actually I meant Z. So it works the same way. You can kind of specify the axis after you start working, or you can just use the handles right here. So you can just grab the Z axis, grab the X axis, or again, just grab wherever and type in the axis that you want. It still works. So yeah, that's, similar ways to do the same thing. When you want to set a keyframe, instead of using I, you use S. So you might have even heard my wording changed a little bit because, again, I'm kind of switching my brain over into industry compatible mode. So I'm using S for set keyframe instead of saying I for insert keyframe. You move your object over, you grab it using whatever tools you wanted, scale it or rotate it along this, scale it on the X, rotate it, let's say, just along the Y, and then we'll set keyframes. And then we move along, let's get back in here, move it up, and then scale it down, do an S to set keyframes, and now let's watch our animation. So both, two different ways to achieve a similar result. Both are going to be a little bit faster than the ones that I've been showing you so far, where we're kind of looking through menus, or we're, moving through clicking. If you want to spend a lot of time in this software, or if you want to, make cool 3D animations, make renders, if you want to, design your own stuff for 3D printing, these are the kind of things that are really going to pay off in the long run. Because if it takes you 2 seconds to do something instead of 30 seconds, then, if you're doing that 10 times, that is a ton of time saved. So that is the basics of working with shortcuts in Blender. And now let's see about working with the scripting. So this is going to be super duper basic, but I find this is a handy thing to know. So we did a handful of movements here. We did a bunch of scaling, we did a bunch of rotating, we did a bunch of whatever. Nifty. If we go into our scripting view here, this will actually show us what all of these things are. So all of these, all of this code here is like the internal workings of Blender, basically. It's when you let's see. Yeah, here's a good one. Yeah, some of them get a little bit crazy. Some of them get a little bit long. So we'll pick a basic one. So Bippy here is Blender Python. We're not going to really get into this because, like I said, we're keeping it super simple. What you need to know about this is Bippy ops mesh primitive cube add. That will add a cube. And then there's all this other stuff. We can ignore all of this other stuff. Some of you might be able to figure out what these last couple of things do. But basically, this is the command that we use to add a cube. So if we want to, add another cube, we can open up a text file here. We've got to type 2 magic words. We've got to say import Bippy. But then we can just go over here and say copy, paste, and run our code. And holy cow, we got a cube there. So hold on, let's move this over, and let's try copying one of these other ones. So we've got Transform, translate, blah, 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 blah. This one's crazy. It's one of the scale or rotate or something. But I can't remember what all of the things mean. One of these will tell me whether it's scaling, rotating, or whatever. But you know what? It doesn't even matter because, like I said, we're just copying and pasting. So now let's see what happens. Okay, so it moved it. So now we got one that moved up over there. So let's see what happens when we, transform, rotate. Oh, there we go. So translate, rotate, resize. Okay, now it's making more sense to me. So the way I'm reading this is I go bippy, ops, transform. So again, if you're not sure what this means, it's okay. We don't need to dive in because we're just doing copying and pasting. But guess what? We're also coding. So let's do this and let's see what we get when we run this code. Whoa, big weird thing. Let's say I don't like that last line. Let's get rid of that last line. We'll move this guy out of the off to the side. Let's see what happens now. No, it's still a big weird guy. Okay, let's, no offense to Liam Neeson. Let's get rid of that last line and let's see what we get now. Oh, I'm lost in the, I can't see. There we go. Okay, so move him out of the way and now play button. And there you can see just another basic kind of cube. And so if you do something in Blender, let's just clear all this stuff out of here. We'll scroll all the way down to the bottom. You can see deleted 8 objects, bippy ops delete. So that's the last thing I just did. So we go up here and we add, let's see, add a cube. There's a cube added. Now we delete. It says delete. So let's add a different mesh. Let's add a monkey. Okay, and we added a monkey. So basically what's happening here is Blender is telling you how it sees all of these operations in code so that you can just copy and paste and you can make your own shortcuts. So if you find that something that you're doing is, okay, every time I start, I want to, bring in a monkey or like, maybe a monkey's not the best example, but like you want to start with the sphere because you really liked the sculpting thing. But every time you bring in a sphere, you want to, scale it up a little bit. You want to like shrink it down. What you can do is you can just look at this down on the bottom. And you can use this to create your starting template. So we added our sphere. Let's say we want to, shrink it down on the Y or on the X, bring it up on the Z, and then we're going to also rotate it slightly like this. So if we take all of this, maybe I want to select this in the right order. I'm not sure if that matters, but copy, paste it into here, then even if we start, with nothing, we can either add our regular sphere if we want to, have just our regular old sphere, or we could run our script and then we've got our fancy rotated shrunk sphere and then we can start sculpting straight from there. So like I said, we're not digging into, writing the script, getting into anything else like that. But this is kind of a cool way that you can experience the script. If you want to dig in, you can actually, read. You can figure out what all of this stuff means. And you can kind of dig in and write your script yourself. If you don't want to, if you're, not interested in any of that stuff, then coding in Blender is as easy as copying from one side and pasting into another. And then as soon as you hit that play button, you get to see the instant result. And you know that your code is going to work because it's already worked. And if you want to know how to code something, all you have to do is do it and then look at what the code looks like and, copy and paste it over. So in that way, there's, just like with the shortcuts, there's a lot of things that you can do that can really help speed things up and give you some cool tools. And let's say, you're primarily interested in Blender for one specific purpose. So you're not into making assets for video games. You're not into 3D animation. You're not into 2D animation. What you do is you work with 3D printers, and that's all that you're interested in. Well, if you go up to Edit and Preferences, there's this tab called Add-ons. And the way add-ons work is they are basically just scripts that people have put together, and they keep them, they maintain them, they update them, so they always work with Blender. But these are other people's little shortcuts. So, you know, someone who maybe only works with 3D printing will have their own set of scripts that helps them out, speeds up their workflow, gives them some cool tools that other people don't have. There might be someone else who, you know, only uses it to do like a visualization of an architecture project. So say you want to get this big construction project, you pitch your design. It's not just a drawing, it's actually a 3D space that, you know, you can go in and out of. You might need a whole different set of options than someone who's maybe in here just for 2D animation, someone who's just making their cartoons or something. So other people who have spent a lot of time in this have collected their own little shortcuts, their own little tools as add-ons. And Blender comes with a bunch of them built in. So they're all disabled right now. But, you know, take some time and play with these, because it's like getting a whole series of other free tools. And one of the, you know, the dangers when you're starting Blender is that there's so much stuff to look at. There's so many, you know, buttons and knobs, and everything's everywhere. It's a little distracting. It's a little overwhelming. So if you had all of these things enabled, it would probably get a little overwhelming. So that's why I kind of said if there's a specific interest that you have in mind. Like when I first got into Blender, it was because I wanted to make video games and I wanted to make my own characters for video games. So there were a handful of things in here that helped me out with that. And I didn't need a lot of the others. But like I said, say you're doing 3D printing, you know, maybe you would want something like the Measure It tool, so you can measure your objects so that you know exactly how big they're going to be in the real world. Precision drawing tools that I think that might give you some sort of, like CAD-like accurate modeling. So maybe you want that one too. But there's a bunch of different options here. There's one, if I can remember the name, you can see there's Archimesh, Archipack. These are both pre-made objects for doing that architectural visualization. So, you know, if you're a construction person, maybe you don't want to spend all the time you need to get, you know, model a pillar, model a doorway, model a window, whatever. You can just use a pre-made one, you know, snap it together. Somebody sees your design, they see what you have in mind. It looks pretty cool, and it didn't take you that long. So you can use stuff like this. There is one specific one that I'm looking for in here, which I think I probably have enabled. 3D Print Toolbox. There we go. Okay, so if we enable this 3D Print Toolbox, let's take this as an example. So we've still got our object in the center. We're going to click up here. So this is what's called the Properties tab in Blender. So it's hidden by default, but you can get to it either by just clicking on that. That'll open it right up. Or as you can see, I can just you know, shrink it, grab it, and shrink it out. Embiggen and ensmallen. So we scroll down here and we can see 3D print. So that is the add-on that I just activated. So if you have an object that you want to 3D print, there may be, you know, a bunch of you know, geometric options. Maybe there's like little slight overhangs that you know aren't going to really work on your printer. You need to make sure that things line up with the specs that you know your printer is able to reproduce. So again, the thickness, maybe you've got details that are just too fine that aren't going to come out. So there's a lot of stuff over here that will help somebody who's into it just for 3D printing. And let's say you are a 3D printer, you're not even a modeler, so you know you don't want to make the stuff, you don't want to edit the stuff, you just want to get the stuff and you want to print it out. So what do you do? Well, that brings us to our next item, the websites. So sketchfab.com is a place where you can get free stuff, and it's also a place where you can get paid stuff. So you might spend a little bit of time working in Blender and you find out, you're really good at making these like camera moves around and you can make stuff look really cool and exciting. You can edit it all together, but you're having a lot of trouble actually making the things, and you try to make a donut and it comes out looking strange. So you might find, you want to lean on somebody else's talents for modeling, and you can see, there's this shoe up here. You can buy, explore the free stuff. But this is all different kind of stuff that you can get that someone else has already made. And, maybe you can use it for free in commercial projects, maybe non-commercial, maybe, if you buy it, obviously you can use whatever you like, but they give you an indication of whether or not they're for sale or they're for free, what the price is. And you can kind of lean on the talents of other people. So like I said, maybe you want to get really good at that cinematography stuff. You want to concentrate on lighting. You add a little bit of fog, you animate the camera, and you don't want to spend the time modeling. You can come to a site like this. You can download some of the free models. If you're working on, professional projects, if you're getting paid, then maybe you can, get some of the premium assets. And if you decide, none of that stuff is interesting, I just want to, spend my time in Blender. I want to make the Hornet. I don't want to mess around with the camera. I don't want to make movies. I just want to make like this cool robot guy here. That's all I want to do. Well, then you can come to this site and you can sell your stuff here and you can make a little bit of money. You can also upload your stuff if you feel like, being generous. You can be one of those people who uploads the stuff that is free. And here we go. Turbo Squid is another site, works in a similar fashion. You can get 3D stuff that other people have made. Maybe you're doing like a medical thing. You need to do a little visualization of like a bone break or something. You can get the skeleton pre-made. It'll look really nice and fancy. Again, you've got a bed here if you're doing some of that architectural visualization stuff. I had to say that 3 times fast. Then you've got a site like BlendSwap. So this is a site where they depend on you joining and kind of contributing with the community. So it's free to use, but they give you like a token system. So you can download like a certain number of blends in a month. So the plus side of this is it's not just a 3D model. It could be like an actual Blender file. It will be a Blender file, but it'll be like the full thing where you can have control over all the different aspects. So some of these, someone has gone to some effort to make it like a self-contained 3D file. So all of these textures will be built in, all of the, like where, the face is, where all this stuff is, that's all figured out for you. On some of these, again, it is figured out for you, but you can actually go in and you can see how it's done. You can edit it yourself. So with some of this stuff, you can get more behind the scenes of the Blender specific workflow to make something. And again, you can see all the different stuff that you've got here. So that's BlendSwap. Let's say you are working in Blender and you're having trouble. You see that other people are able to make these, these stylized characters. You really want to learn how to do it, but you're having trouble. You can go to the blenderartists.org forum. There's tons of stuff, tips and tricks. It's pretty active. I find, a lot of the time when I Google something, when I DuckDuckGo to search for, how do I do this? Why is this happening? Why is this going wrong? Please help me, someone. I will end up on this site a lot of the time. So yeah, it's a great resource for if you're not sure how to do something, to take advantage of the questions and answers, the experience of the community. Another place that you can go, say you're more interested in that scripting stuff and you're kind of thinking like, yeah, you know what, that sounds pretty cool. I want to work on, making some add-ons. I want to, see about the inner workings of Blender. Well, then you can go to the Stack Exchange. And this is one of the best places I've found to get answers for technical stuff in Blender. So the artist community is great. They do have a technical section as well, but I find they are best at the sort of art, the style guide aspect. Whereas Blender Stack Exchange is where I go to see, what do I write in my script? I wrote this and it's not doing what I want. How do I change it? And you'll find people on here will help you out. It's a phenomenal resource. So if you're into the technical side, the Stack Exchange is great. There's also the Blender community. That's just this is like the official Blender, just for news, updates, questions, feature requests. So if if Blender doesn't do something that you think it should do, you can come on here and say, hey, why don't we have, a little house shape when you say add new shape. Just the official way that you can keep track of what's happening with the program itself. You've also got, back to the technical side, another way, if you don't want, or if you don't see the add-on that you want by going, up to Preferences, Add-ons, you can actually just download add-ons by going to usually people's GitHub pages. So you may know, of a person or of an add-on that you want. You can go straight there. It's not necessarily the easiest place to browse GitHub, but you'll probably find on Stack Exchange or on the artist community people saying, oh, well, if you haven't heard of this add-on, check this out, check this link, try this out. And most of the time it'll take you back to GitHub, which again is just a place where you can host your scripts. So if you want to see what someone who's got a little bit more experience scripting, what their scripts look like. And again, this is all because Blender is open source. Most of the people involved have that open source mentality. So they let you see, the ins and outs. They let you see the bumps and the scratches. You get to find out how, everything works. If you want to put the time in to read the script and get that out of it, then you can if you want. So that is GitHub, a place to download scripts, a place to find add-ons. And that will take us to the final one. Here we go. Sheepit. So every time at the end of the video, I hit the render button, and that will take what we have in Blender, the whatever wonky animation we've got going on, and that will turn it into a video that we can watch in the end. So I hit the render button and I usually say, okay, we'll see you in a little bit of time because, it's going to take some time to render. And it takes time, but it also takes a little bit of computing power. So depending on what your computing setup is like, maybe it takes a lot more time than you're really willing to give it. And maybe it's using, every last ounce of power that your computer takes, so you can't really do anything else. You try to check your email and, it's chugging so slow that you're finding that, oh, holy cow, I really can't do this. You can use this service called Sheepit. And what Sheepit is it's a distributed render farm. So when somebody at, say Pixar wants to render out their final movie, you can imagine if it takes me a few minutes to render out this super basic scene of, the Minecraft guy going back and forth, how long it could take to render out some of those really detailed, well-lit scenes in some of those movies. So the way they do it is they render it out not just on one big, powerful supercomputer, but they'll render it out on a ton of different computers at the same time. And some of them will be not so powerful, some of them will be more powerful, but it's not so much about the power of the computer as it is the number of them. And, woollabaloo for Pixar because they've got the money to, buy these computers, set up the whole thing. But what about you and me, who just has the one computer that they, work on, and that's it? How do we take advantage of that kind of power? Well, that is what this initiative is aimed at. So with this, you may have 250 frames in your project, but if you're using this Sheepit, it's a little app that you download and install, you might only end up rendering, half of them. And then your stuff might be ready in half the time. So how do they do this if it's free? Well, the way it works is you are helping out back with other people and you get points for that. So you'll download maybe one frame of somebody else's project and you'll render that. So, maybe this project would be just absolutely insane and it would take your computer like 3 months to render. But you're just grabbing one frame, maybe it takes 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes to render whatever it is. And then that earns you points that you can then basically spend when you hit render on your own projects. So Sheepit is a distributed rendering farm. It will render your projects faster, probably in most cases. It will take less resources on your computer to render these things. So there's pluses and there's minuses, but this is an option if you have $0. If you have money, then there are paid render farms too. So again, just like with the Sketchfab and with the TurboSquid, if you're doing a professional project, if you're getting paid for something, then maybe you want to invest in something else. One of the big attractions for me with Blender was that it's free. So I'm primarily, into all of the free assets that you can get and all of the people who are contributing open source stuff that you can and learn from and, contribute back to. So I think that is really everything that I wanted to introduce you to about Blender. There's so much more in there. If we go back in, we didn't even get to most of these tabs up here. But I hope I gave you enough to, get your feet wet and to kind of see if there's something that you think you might want to do there. Like I said, there's 3D animation, there's 2D animation, there's making assets for video games, there's physics simulations, which we didn't get into, there's prepping models for 3D printing, there's CAD design. There's just tons and tons of stuff that you can do depending on how you use it, and you'll use probably a whole different set of workflows, a different set of tools, and a different set of add-ons depending on what you want to do. But Blender is a really capable program and definitely rewards the time that you put into it. If you have any questions, if there's anything that you wanted to try that I didn't cover, send me an email and I'll see if I can help you out with resources. Okay, take care, everybody. Thanks.